Good morning and happy Monday. We have a bonus episode this week of Mavens of Manufacturing, and I am super excited because this is episode 201 for Mavens, which is really exciting. And I get to welcome back Joyce Sidopoulos. Hello, Joyce. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you for returning on Mavens again. I'm super excited because the reason why you're here is we're going to be focusing on the Robotics Summit and Expo that's happening in Boston, Massachusetts from April 29th to May 1st. And it's such a great conference. I loved it. I think it's one of my favorites just because the vibe is more intimate, but it's also more educational. And as a tech writer, I nerd out about that stuff.
No, I read something you wrote about it being more of an intimate conference, and I kind of like that because really the robotics community is pretty tight. Everyone knows everybody, even if they're not from Boston. It's kind of a small community, so it's like a reunion, but you're also learning about a lot of new things. So
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it's really cool. It makes me want to live in Boston, but when you told me that you guys were having snow out there, I was like, maybe I don't want
Yeah.
to live out in Boston. But to anyone who's tuning in, feel free to drop your comments in the comments section. And if you have questions for Joyce, you can put those in there as well. I don't want to be the only one asking questions, but if I have to, I will. I got enough on my list, but feel free to ask questions. But Joyce, what's been happening with MassRobotics? How has your year been so far?
The year is amazing. We're about to announce like another expansion because we're out of space. So we just keep filling up and adding space and filling up and adding space. So it's robotics is really on the upswing right now. Lots of
That's
factors go into that, and I'm sure we're going to get into it. So
That's really cool. Well, to all the audience members who might not know who you are or Mass Robotics, can you just give us a brief overview of what Mass Robotics does for manufacturing and engineering and what your role is into that whole equation?
yeah, so MassRobotics is really a convener and a connector of
Mhm.
everything from academia to startups to industry and government and talent and funding. And right now, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, is what's trending. And the biggest thing right now is manufacturing. That's the biggest adopter of robotics right now. And with this administration and the focus on bringing manufacturing back, really the only way to do that is to be cost competitive with other countries, and that's where robotics is going to help. So
Mhm.
Mass Robotics, our mission here, and we're in Boston in the Seaport area, is really to accelerate the adoption and the use and the just the robotics technology field in general. We're very focused on startups, so we give startups that are in the robotics and physical AI space like space to work in the shared work area, and programming and really all the resources they need to scale. And while we are originated here in Boston and our headquarters is in Boston, we're really helping and reaching and supporting robotics worldwide. So we run an accelerator. We have a healthcare catalyst program. So lots of programs that can bring in startups from all over. About 25% of our startups are from overseas. So they're not even from the
Wow.
US. Um, so we advocate for the industry as a whole. We help with adoption standards, policy. We also escalate the startups here. So physically, we have the space and we provide them all the resources they need physically, but also programmatically and introductions to talent and investment and that kind of thing. And we also educate. So we have we educate in many ways. So we educate the public with our robot block party. We educate our startups with new technology, and the Robotics Summit is an awesome place for that because it really brings in all the latest and greatest and new things that our
Mhm.
startups can be using. And then we have a whole kind of STEM education piece where we educate the high school and student community. So we have academies and summer programs and that kind of thing.
Very cool. I think one of my favorite parts of last year was actually the accelerator pitch
Mm.
event that you guys had. And I was like, very, very, I got teary eyed with one of the presentations because I think the kid was only, I say kid because I'm in my 40s and he's a young adult. I think he was only like 17 or 18. And just the way that these individuals were pitching and some of the projects that they were currently working on were massively fascinating. So, do you have one specific success story that always comes to mind when you talk about MassRobotics that you are really excited and proud about?
It's first of all, it's really hard to pick one because it's like saying pick my favorite child. Can never pick
Yeah.
one. The one that you were talking about from last year was in the space industry, and he's gone
Hmm.
on to raise a couple $1 million. So he's a big success. Yes, he was probably 18. He was an MIT student, and
Yeah.
launched this kind of space robotics type startup. But there's a number of them from last year that are doing well. And wait till you see the ones from this year. So this year we have another 10, and that's something that we'll be showcasing at the summit. The 10 startups, and they go through our 13-week accelerator program, and from beginning to end, it's a huge difference in the way they're presenting, the progress that they've made. So they'll have a session at the summit. We'll also have a booth at the summit for them to kind of showcase what they're doing. So it will be
I'm
exciting.
super excited about that this year. And the vibe in the room was just really, it was very welcoming. It was energy. Every startup was cheering for one another. So it was like a big collaboration. And you could tell that the networking going on was really an educational portion of it too, because they were learning from one another and sharing their failures as well as their successes. So it was just really refreshing to see that, and it made me really excited to see what's going to happen in the robotics industry as a whole. But let's get to that. What are some of the biggest challenges and opportunities in robotics today that you see versus maybe last year when we were talking at this time?
Yeah, I still think the biggest opportunities are in spaces like manufacturing and logistics and warehousing and supply chain, and helping with that. And that's where we're seeing the biggest adoptions. And I think there's a tremendous advancement in collaborative robots. And so those are robots that are working alongside people, not doing what the people do, but augmenting what the people are doing. And so that's
Mhm.
where we see a lot of adoption, and it's in industries where there's a labor shortage. So manufacturing for sure, and logistics and warehousing. It's never going to, I don't think that's ever going to slow down. You're never going to say, oh, I don't want my item faster, right? Or I don't.
Mhm.
So I think those areas, but then we're also seeing other areas of adoption like agriculture and construction and healthcare. So that's kind of the next wave where we're seeing a lot of adoption. And agriculture, again, there's labor shortage there. Same for construction. So what can we do to bring in these collaborative robots that can work with people to aid with some of the difficult tasks that they're doing? And a lot of this, these enabling technologies that allow this to happen are things like cloud compute. So the robot doesn't have to be as expensive because a lot of the computation can be done, in the cloud. Sensors are becoming less expensive. Compute in general is becoming less expensive. So there's a lot of enabling lower tier technologies, I'll call them, that kind of come together to make the robot more, have better abilities and be less expensive.
What role do you see artificial intelligence playing in the future of robotics? Because that is everywhere, and it's
Mhm.
so the pace that it's just being adapted and talked about and used and integrated has been just really interesting to see, because I feel like it was only 2 years ago or 3 years ago that Chat GPT made its appearance, and then everybody was like, oh, this is just probably going to be a phase, and some people were like, kind of like the same vibe that humanoids had when they were getting talked about more. But it just seems to be the main focus of attention at some of
Mhm.
these conferences and trade shows. So what's your perspective
So
on that?
yeah, I'll tell you, the AI is definitely another enabling technology, and people are saying, we have this big digital divide and gap. Honestly, I think something like a Chat GPT and these AI tools are narrowing the gap, right? They're making any ordinary person be able to ask ChatGPT a question and get an answer, and it can program for you, right? So instead of you having to write lines and lines of code, you can ask for help and it will be generated. So you think of how many people know how to program in C++, but if you ask the AI tool to do it for you, it can give you something that will work. So I feel like it's really AI in general is a tool and a technology that is really going to change the world. For robotics, we're looking at physical AI. So basically models that can perceive and understand the environment that they're in, which is a whole nother thing. It's much different than, reading in a bunch of text and documents and being able to, generate something based on what you know. There's so much data that has to go into the real physical environment, right? Because things are moving and changing all the time. So it's not like you have fixed things like you do in documents. So people are making great strides in that area, and that's really going to help advance robotics even faster, because now we'll have models that can understand the streets or the environment that you're in, and it can identify people from animals and trees that aren't moving. And so I think the whole physical AI piece, and I think there's going to be a few talks on that at the summit as well. So yeah, all fascinating and things that are going to really be moving the needle for robotics.
It's definitely an interesting time to be part of this industry. You mentioned collaboration too before when talking about the startups, and how important is collaboration when it comes between the startups, the investors, and the manufacturers? Why is that such an important element for these relationships to work so that we can continue to move forward within this industry, especially in the United States?
Well, if you think about manufacturing and the startup, so a manufacturer is not going to take a new product and shut down a line to be able to start using something that they've never tested. So it's really important that the startups understand and visit the manufacturers, and have lots of close collaborations to understand exactly what needs to be done and be able to test it off-site before bringing it into a factory, right? So you can't just be a startup working on some technology you think is cool. You have to find a manufacturer that needs that technology that you can adapt to use on their line, right? And that's why a lot of these collaborative robots are making great strides, because they're robots that can just be pushed into place and work on something for a little while and then pushed to another spot and work on something else and not disrupt the line that's manufacturing, right? So I think it's really important for the startups to understand that they have to visit and go out to the customer. And the customer has to be open to listen to what the startup is working on and help them pivot a little bit if they need to really meet the requirements. So it's a lot of give and take, and they both have to be able to understand each other, right?
So one of my favorite things to talk about is workforce, because I'm really passionate about getting younger generations excited about, the opportunities that our sector has to offer. And I think robotics and automation is a really exciting area, not just for current generations to get more involved in, but also younger generations. And you mentioned a couple of things at the beginning of our conversation about some of the things that you're doing on the academic side, but can you provide any more detail or maybe an example of how MassRobotics is really helping develop that next generation of robotics talent? Because I feel like it is essential for us to continue moving forward, especially for those businesses that are really struggling to find that talent.
Yeah, so one thing about the next workforce talent is there's while robotics are coming in and being used collaboratively in a manufacturing setting, let's say, it's augmenting the workforce, but also creating a lot of new jobs. So there's going to be jobs for AI specialties, robotics engineers, data scientists, AI-driven support service representatives. So you really need a technical workforce. And so how do we do that? How do we upskill and how do we reskill the people that are already there? There's also jobs to maintain and to troubleshoot and to operate these robots, right? I really think that we're going to need to see some kind of collaboration between academia, industry, and the government to be able to bring more STEM into high schools and bring robotics into high schools and computer science into high schools. I know it's there, but none of it is mandatory yet.
Mhm.
But really, that's where the labor market is going. And so we really need to figure out a way to bring these types of classes to the high school level to get people interested. But then there's the upskilling after the people are already working. And how do you go into a manufacturer or a space where people just haven't been trained in this area? So
Yeah.
we have some ideas at MassRobotics about what to do. And we were actually proposing a manufacturing implementation center where people can come here to learn, and then also so bring manufacturers here to test out new things, but then also train the workforce. So that's kind of
Wow.
one of the ideas we have brewing.
That sounds interesting. I'm gonna have to ask you more about that and see how I can get involved with that, because I feel like too it's really dependent on the communities that you're in and what sort of leadership you have. And then with this recent announcement with some of the funding being pulled from the MEPs in the nation, I just don't think that's going to be really helpful in terms of trying to connect industry with the educational institutions, because some communities just are struggling to even get the budget. Like within my community, the budget was recently just cut. And it's like, how are we going to get these kids ready for that type of technical environment if we're not supporting them on the financial side? Because robots are not cheap. And I
Right,
know a lot of companies are donating stuff and sponsoring where they can, but they can't do it all on their own. It has to be this collaboration between
right.
community leaders, educational institutions, and groups like yours. So I'm interested to see where this is going to go after that announcement with the MEPs. So we'll see, right?
I'm with you there. I mean, like I said, we have lots of ideas. All those ideas take funding.
Right, absolutely. So if for the future outlook, what sort of applications are growing the fastest that you've seen? Like, for example, in logistics, healthcare, manufacturing, autonomous vehicles, any that are catching your eye or might be your favorite?
Well, so manufacturing logistics for sure. They have been on the up, the upslope
Mhm.
on adoption. So we've seen a lot of that. Amazon just put, oh gosh, was it billions of dollars into automating one of their warehouses. I think Locust Robotics just had their 3 billionth pick, something like that. I
Oh
just
my
read.
God.
So they're really, people are adopting those robots wide scale. We've seen a lot of agriculture robots. And if you think about it, everyone used to be a farmer here 200 years ago, and now it's like 1% of the population, and there's not a lot of workforce. So we are seeing a lot of automation, and more recently robotics and more precision type things. So like precision weeding, precision spraying for pesticides, and understanding like what areas of the fields need water, so to conserve water and only use it where it's needed. So use of drones, use of robots for weeding, for harvesting, and packaging and all that kind of stuff. So a lot in the ag space. We're doing an event in a couple months on robotics in construction, and talking about all of the areas that robots can help in construction. And a lot of that is you still need people on site. But
Mhm.
these are robots to augment and take the workload, let's say, off your back, or to hold things up while you're doing something. So all things that kind of help, and basically help with safety,
Yeah.
in many instances. And healthcare, there are so many ways robotics and AI can help in the healthcare space, especially with the aging population. We have a couple of assistive robotics technologies in the healthcare space. One specifically will be in our healthcare catalyst program. So that's another. So we have the accelerator that will be pitching their 10 companies, but then we also have this healthcare catalyst program that we run. It's kind of like a 6 to 9 month group that meets with their specific mentors to help them reach milestones. They'll also be pitching on the second day. So similar to the accelerator, they'll have times to pitch, and they'll also have a booth at the summit. So they'll be kind of showcasing their things. So another really cool thing to check out.
That's really, my daughter's in the medical field now. She's going to school to be a surgical nurse. And
Hmm.
one of the things that she wants to see in action is that automated CPR machine that they strap
Oh,
on to people. And I've seen it on TV a couple of times. It's just, it makes that process easier for the EMTs
does
because
it do the
doing,
compressions?
yeah, it does the
Wow.
compressions because manual CPR just tires out the EMT.
Yeah.
So they just strap this device on and it's mobile and it just does
Wow.
the chest compressions. And I think they can adjust it depending on who the patient is or
Right,
the
you
size.
size. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool and it's saved a bunch of lives already. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. Marco's on here says high quality talking. Thanks. You're welcome, Marco. Thanks for joining. And then yeah, within construction, I did a podcast not too long ago, and I never understood why construction and manufacturing were always like separate. Because if you think about it, and this is what I learned on the podcast, they were like, construction is manufacturing, it just goes up. It's
Huh.
not
Cool.
linear. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. But he was talking about the tie bot that is in construction now, where it ties the
Oh, the rebar.
yeah, the
Yeah.
cabling for bridges and everything. And he's like, I know so many people in construction that are missing so many fingers because that's a dangerous
Right.
thing to do. And this robot helps them automate that process and it's faster. And
Mhm.
while it's doing that, the workers can do other things while the robot's working on the rebar. So it's pretty cool stuff that's coming
Yes.
out. I
Yes.
like it.
So maybe you could come
Um,
to Boston for that construction event. That's June 5th.
Yeah, I would love to come out there. I have to see what's going on with my kiddos because they keep me on my toes. So, what are your predictions for robotics in the next 5 to 10 years? Like, what do you predict is going to happen with the
Well,
industry?
I think with the advancement of this physical AI and models that are getting better and better, I think it's going to be a lot easier to do telepresence. Actually, be somewhere, but actually be working somewhere else with a robot. And that's actually happening now, but it's not perfect. But I think with the 5G and cloud compute
Mhm.
and everything being so much faster, that might be something that you'll see, especially in surgeries and the healthcare area. But I really see at the ag industry adopting a lot more, and I really think that's gonna help farms and help with the labor shortage. Like I said, I
Mhm.
think manufacturing and logistics, that's already taken off, and people are just going to keep adopting. I think if you're not using robots in your warehouse now, in the next 5 years, you'll have at least one that you're testing.
Yeah. What about the role of public perception or policy in robotics adoption? What do you think is going to happen there? Because I was so interested when those dock strikes happened and the conversation that was around it, and people on LinkedIn getting so angry with those dock workers. Like, don't they know? And it's like, well, no, they don't know because we're not really
Right.
educating the general public. So, what is your insight on that
Well,
perspective?
I think a lot of times Hollywood doesn't do us any favors. So, so we host a robot block party every year, and that's specifically for the public to come out and see the robots firsthand and see that they're not there. They're not dangerous. Safety is the number one concern with anybody working on robots is how safe are they around
Mhm.
people, and if they're really not taking jobs. Robots, they still can't do a lot of what our human brain can do and our human brain can perceive. So when you build a robot, you usually build it for a specific task in mind. There's really not a robot that can do everything we can do, that can walk and open a door, but can also get a drink, and that can also sew a buttonhole, that can also bowl and play chess. So usually when there's a robot design, it's designed for a specific task to help in a manufacturer on a construction site, but it can't get to the construction site by itself. Someone has to drive it there. So I think the public is getting a lot better. I really do. When we see how the people who come to the block party have changed, a lot of them are young students. And so a lot of the younger students that are coming through are helping to change the aging population's thoughts on robotics. especially now that people are working on a lot of assistive tech for the aging population, autonomous wheelchairs. One of the wheelchairs you'll see at the summit is specifically to help people get out of bed, be able to go to the bathroom by themselves and come back into bed. And you'll be able to try it, Megan. You'll love it. I tried it a couple weeks ago. Just the way it scoops you up so you don't need help. So I think when people see how it's actually going to help them be able to stay in their home longer, help them, remember to take their medication. There's so many things that it can help with that I really think the public's perception is changing now.
Yeah, I just remember the last movie trailer that I saw was on that stupid robot Megan, the babysitter, and I'm like, this is not going to help anybody's case in manufacturing, because that. And then I was mad because her name was Megan, and I'm like, now when everybody sees me, they're gonna think that stupid robot that kills everybody. But yeah, I think Hollywood is not doing us any favors. Jill said, yes, excellent topics. And TieBot has been one of my favorite 5 robot stories in casual public conversation. So cool. I love hearing about that. And then Tim says, using AI to analyze the input signals is intriguing. It definitely is. I can't wait to see, because I think AI, the more we start talking about humanoids and them being able to interact and maybe do different tasks, I think AI is going to play a huge role in that. So I know there's still like people's kind of sneering at humanoids, but I don't know. I think it's fascinating. And there's a lot of companies that are doing really cool. One of my friends, she's known as the robot queen, and she was just at Hanover Messe, and she interacted with the humanoid robot, and it like took its hand to shake her hand. And she was like, oh, and she was just like, this is really cool. So we'll see what happens. Tim just said, I always like to say that a human hand has millions of sensors in it. That universality is hard to replicate by the tech is moving so fast. Yeah. I also have a cousin who is a paraplegic, and he's looking into the exoskeletons, the automated ones, so that he can try to walk again. Because right now he's bounded to a wheelchair. So I'm going to be interested in seeing that one that helps you get out of your bed and go to the bathroom.
Oh yeah, you will love that one. It's called Revamo. So you should also look at, I saw that Larry Jasinski is going to be at the show on a panel. He makes the exoskeleton that is for paralyzed people. And it's been on the market for quite some time. It got I don't know if it was FDA approval, but it got some kind of approval where it could be sold to veterans to start. And now I believe it's on what is the medical term where you can actually get reimbursement for buying it. But it's crazy to see someone who's been paralyzed. The guy I first saw try it had been paralyzed for something like 11 years and got to wear the exo and got one, and it changes your life, really. So I'll introduce you to Larry.
Yeah, I think could be. It's because what ended up happening to my cousin is he initially had a tumor in his brain. He lost his peripheral vision, so they did a CAT scan on him, and he had a tumor. So they removed the tumor, and then they thought it was the medication that was causing the symptoms that he was displaying, but he was like kind of slurring his words and couldn't really talk. Well, what ended up having is he had a brain bleed, and they didn't catch it for like 7 hours or something like that. So he basically lost all mobility. And then his mom is the one that noticed that he was trying to communicate with her, and he's a writer. So he memorized all of the keys on a keyboard before this happened to him. So she's able to like hold his hand, and he can guide her on a keyboard. And that's how he communicates, is with the help of his mom. So they're looking into communication systems too, so that she can not have to be the one to help him out. But he's still smart as a whip. And it's just, he's just confined to his wheelchair. So yeah, if you could introduce me to him, I would love to have a conversation with him and maybe introduce him to my cousin, because my cousin like wants to move around and get his life back, and he's still hilarious as all heck too, even though he can't
I have another company for you to talk to about how to use his keyboard. So remind me after.
Yes. Okay. This is cool. I'm going to tell my mom too, because she'll be really excited to hear that. Um, cool. Well, with the Robotics Summit and Expo coming around the corner, why should people attend this specific summit? Like, what has your experience been? Why do you attend it every year? Like,
Yeah.
what's
Well,
your pitch for that?
what I love about the summit is it's all about the tech. So with robotics changing so fast, you really need to see what are the new sensors coming out, what are the new motors, what's the new gripper. So it's really all about the tech, and I think it's a great spot for our startups and the ecosystem to kind of come together and learn and network with each other. What are you working on? What are you working on? As you said, it's very intimate. So I feel like they have networking sessions in the evenings where you can meet people, you can go to booths. So it's all about like the networking. But I think the keynote sessions and being on the expo floor and seeing all the new tech is really what's cool. And one of our startups is bringing their robot that serves tennis balls or pickleballs. So you'll have a chance to be able to play pickleball and be served from the Tenabot's server. So
That's
that's
cool.
fun. So I think we're always trying to add kind of fun things to the summit. I already have an idea for next year about what we're going to do. So always adding something fun.
That's awesome. Well, you also are going to be moderating a session on Thursday, I believe. Is it Thursday morning or Wednesday
Yes,
morning?
Thursday morning with
Okay.
Laura. Yep.
It's the Women in Robotics breakfast. So can you tell us more about that? Like, who is Laura and what are some of the topics that you're going to be focused on during that session?
Yeah, so you can read all about Laura to understand like her kind of career journey. So we try not to go too much into the career journey and more into her as a person and how she, I won't say gets through every day, but what are some of the challenges she's faced and some of the strategies she uses, some advice she has for kind of younger and up and coming roboticists. So it's more, I like to get to know the people. Last year we had Kate Darling, and she was hilarious and
She was awesome.
brought one of her little robot toys. Laura wrote a book a couple of years ago, so we'll talk a little bit about her book. But she is now with Hyundai and Motional. So she's the interim CEO at Motional. She's the CTO also. And she's been there for a couple of years now. She was at Sci-Fi before that, and then Draper Labs before that. Does a lot of human-robot interaction. So we're going to talk a little bit about maybe the robot interaction that you get when you get into one of their vehicles. So I'm happy to take extra questions, and we'll take questions from the floor also. So, yeah.
I still am nervous about that human interaction with autonomous vehicles. I don't know. I mean, I think it's just because I'm a control freak and I have ADHD, so I just don't want to let go of that.
So I haven't been in one for, oh my gosh, since before COVID, when Optimus Ride was still around. I hopped into the back of one of theirs when they were testing around the seaport here. And at that point it was still a little jerky, but people who ride in them say, within 5 minutes, you forget that there's nobody driving and you just are more at ease. I think you just have to get used to it. So we'll have to go for a ride out in San Francisco sometime.
I will have to do, because I don't think I've ever done one completely autonomous. I've been in some of the Teslas before where the driver's like, oh, look, no hands. And I'm like, that's not cool. Can you please put your hands back on the wheel? And I don't know if I have to blame my dad for that, because my dad is not a very good driver. So I just get nervous when people
hands on the wheel.
Yeah, please. Eyes forward, pay attention. Well, Joyce, this has been such a great conversation. I really appreciate you coming back on Mavens. And, because I am all about getting more women involved, and I think robotics is a great place. And I've met so many women in this specific field with robotics and automation and programming. Why do you think more women should join this type of area, and why is it a great time for them to join now?
You know what? It's really a great time for anyone, but we have been running this Women in Robotics group, and it keeps growing and growing. And now I think our last event, we had over 150 people. So it's growing, and it's not just about the tech and the mechanical engineering, the electrical engineering. There's so much more that goes into robotics, right? There's design, there's the computer science side, there's the control side, there's the human robot interaction and what the person expects and what the robot expects and how do they communicate. So there's the field is just wide open. So there's no reason that we can't all just jump in. There's got to be something for everyone, right?
I agree with that. Well, Joyce, if people have more questions for you or they want to learn more about MassRobotics, what is the quickest and easiest way to connect with you and where should they go?
So the best thing is to get onto our website because we answer a lot of questions just through the website. It's massrobotics.org. And we have a section on our startups, a section on our sponsors, a section on STEM, events that are coming up, our signature series, which includes the construction event that's coming up. So all of that is on the website. If you want to learn more, you can follow us on LinkedIn, get our newsletter. We do a bi-weekly newsletter that also has great news, upcoming events, opportunities. So any of that. And then if you want to actually email us, info@massrobotics.org. And that's a great way to learn more.
I'll make sure to put all this because I'm going to write a follow-up article on this. And then if you want to meet Joyce in person and learn more about MassRobotics, you should just register for the Robotics Summit and Expo because it's at the end of April and you still have time to register. So I'll include the registration link in the comments after I get off with this recording with Joyce. But because we are talking about robotics and it is the month of April and it is also Autism Awareness Month, there is a group that I mentor here in Beloit, Wisconsin called Turtle Tech Robotics, and they made it to a premier event and they got a grant for $5,000. But it's contingent with being able to raise the second half of that $5,000 to come up with the 10 grand that they need. So I am asking all of my audience members to please just scan the QR code. I'll include it in the comments below after I get off this recording with Joyce, and just donate $1. I have over 12,000 followers on LinkedIn, so I'm just asking all of my followers to just donate $1, and then they'll easily surpass that. So if you could please do that, I'd appreciate it. We have a few more comments. Yes, it is an excellent webinar. Suggest some reference books on robotics molding. Ooh, I would have to look into that. And then I met so many amazing robotics ladies online as a guest at Women in Robotics chapter during COVID is Emo, Missouri. Emo's Missouri, right? I think so. Yeah. I think it's Missouri. There's a weird one with the O. But Joyce, again, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And to all those who commented it, thank you. This week, we also have a Mavens of Manufacturing on Friday at 11:30 Central Time. So please tune in this week for that episode. Bye, everyone. Have a great Monday.
And congrats on your 201.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Joyce. Have a good one, everyone. Bye. This episode of Mavens of Manufacturing has been sponsored by Z Ink Solutions. Z Ink Solutions. This isn't your grandmother's copywriting service. We provide copywriting and copy editing services that provide impactful text and memorable storytelling for a variety of brands and industries. Contact us today at zinkSolutions.com. That's z-inksolutions.com.